Hey guys, in this video I'll be talking about my interview experience at King's College London. So I applied to King's College and I had my medical interview a few years ago now, and a lot of you will be applying to King's College London. It's a fantastic university, particularly for medicine. They've got a huge campus located right next to the Shard pretty much. And if you want to know more about what medicine is like at King's College London, make sure to go and check out the channel called That Medic. And the guy who runs this channel was actually from old school, and now he's graduated and he's a doctor now. So he's many years ahead of me, and his videos are just brilliant, like the filming, the editing, the music. So big thanks to Modify.co.uk for making this video possible, and let's get to it. My King's College interview was in February, mid-February I'd say. And as many of you know, the King's College interview is an MMI interview. Now of all the interviews that I had one panel interview, one sort of Oxford style interview, tutorial style interview, and one MMI interview. So I wasn't sure how to prepare for an MMI. MMI standing for multiple mini interview. So I did some research into it, and King's College London was like every other medical school. You had 6 or 7 stations, and at each station they'd give you a different question, a different scenario, a different problem, and you'd have to use your skills and your knowledge to get through each station. Now between each station you had a minute's break. So I went along to the interview. There was a group of let's say 15-20 of us just waiting outside. We were called in, we were registered, and then we were told to go into a waiting room. Now in this waiting room we were given an ethical scenario. So at many medical interviews you'll be asked to analyse ethical scenarios and for you to discuss the different options that you have, the different principles that are important for you to consider. And so they gave us a problem on a piece of paper, and they gave us approximately, I'm not sure, about half an hour to an hour to go through analysing the problem. It was plenty of time. I think most of the people there, just pretty much at the end of it, just sat around. And you are allowed to take this annotated sort of ethical scenario into the interview. The rules may have changed since I did my interview, but this was the case when I did it. Now you're not allowed to talk in that room, so it's just a bit of time for you to silently think about things. Now if this thing does still exist, and if you do finish early, I strongly recommend that you just sit down and you think about other answers, and you think about your answers to other questions they might ask. You go through in your mind, through all the preparation that you've done, just rejogging your memory. Or you can also take a small nap like some people did. But yes, after that you are called into a big room, and in this room you have like these sort of boxed off sections, similar to those like typical call centre office cubicles. Now in each sort of cubicle thing you have 2 chairs, one chair for the interviewer who sits opposite you diagonally, and another chair for you. Outside each cubicle you have a stool. So I think you have a few minutes, maybe 5 or 6 minutes at each station, and then you get a minute's break or 2 minutes break sitting on the stool outside. Now once this sort of cycle has begun, you're not allowed to talk to anyone, you're on your own, and you sort of cycle through each station. Sometimes there might be 7 stations but 6 interviewers, so you might end up seeing one interviewer twice. So I haven't yet mentioned, but I was successful. I did get an offer from King's College. My offer was 3 A's, so it was the lowest of all my offers. And so although I got offers from Cambridge, UCL and King's College, I of course chose Cambridge as my firm. Then I chose King's College as my insurance, just in case things went completely wrong, in the final exams. You never can tell. And so with my AS level scores, AAA was pretty easily attainable, as opposed to choosing UCL for my insurance, because an A star is really hard to get. And if things do go really badly, I may end up with no A stars. And so the King's College offer for my insurance choice. So overall, I found the King's College interview quite fun, I'd say. Mainly because it's just very different. You meet a new interviewer, very frequently. And so you can always have a fresh pulse of energy, as you go to each station. As opposed to, at UCL or Cambridge, where you're stuck with the same interviewers for 20-30 minutes. It's kind of hard to sort of keep that motivation up, whereas if you're meeting new people, you can always be enthusiastic. And so if you do get an interview there, make sure to go to each new station with, a completely fresh mindset. Another thing at King's College, which was quite nice, was how we were told that interviewers don't communicate too much between each other. Each interviewer will score you, but then that score from the interviewer is like a score from the interviewer. That score isn't discussed between interviews, if that makes sense. And so the way you present yourself to that interviewer will determine how that interviewer grades you, of course. And all those scores are eventually collated and you get an overall score. In addition to that, King's College told us that once you got to the interview stage, nothing but the interview counts. So your GCSEs don't matter anymore, your A-levels don't matter anymore, your UK CAT score doesn't matter anymore. Once you get to the interview, whether you get an offer or not simply is based upon your interview performance. So again, interview performance at King's College is critical for getting that offer. So whenever I went into each cubicle, I was really smiley, greeted everyone, shook people's hands. So there were quite a few different stations. So the first station I remember was a lovely interviewer. He asked me about why medicine, again, general questions, a few experiences that I'd had, my volunteering. That was all quite interesting to talk about. Now remember, King's College interviewers, they haven't seen your personal statement before. With MMI interviews, it's quite difficult for all the interviewers to read all the people's personal statements. And so you need to use this opportunity to really talk about all your experiences, talk about all the things that you've done, to mention how proactive you've been. It's pretty much your time to shine. As opposed to at UCL or Cambridge, where they've read your personal statement, so you can't really talk about stuff you've mentioned on there too much, because then it looks like you're simply repeating what you've written there. And they're really impressed. Like, half the interviews for me were just like, really? That's really good. And that's simply because all of you applying are so motivated, you've done so many different activities and work experience, placements and all of those things, that they want to hear about this. And so if you don't mention things that you've done with the King's College interviewers, they simply won't know that you've done them. When you go through the stations, really make sure to mention loads of things that you've done. And as well as mentioning them, talk about what you've learned from them. There's no need to spend too much time dwelling on one thing. Just mention it, then move on, talk about different things. So then another station was about analysis of a graph. It was a simple sort of column graph, and they said, what does this show? What trends are there? Initially she said describe, and then after she said explain. So remember, when they ask the question so explicitly, make sure just to describe. Don't start explaining when you've been asked to describe, because that will annoy the interviewer. If they want you to explain, they'll ask you afterwards. That was quite straightforward. And when we talked about the reasons for those trends, I made sure to link in my A-level biology. I used stuff I'd learned from my work experience placements. And this will show the interviewer that you've got such a broad, spectrum of knowledge, and that you're able to link so many things together. And as a doctor, linking different things together is really important. Now, at another station, they asked me to, they gave me a photograph, and then they said, imagine I'm standing in another room. Could you look at this photograph and describe it in as much detail as possible so that I can imagine this photograph in my head as you're describing it? Although it's quite a peculiar question, make sure to practice doing this. So, of course, start off broad, describe the overall picture, and then begin honing in and describing more specific things. Otherwise, if you start going straight in for the detail, the person imagining the photo or the picture is going to be quite disorientated. So you want to really make sure that you are quite systematic with how you describe it. It's a completely justified station, because let's say you're a doctor, you're a junior doctor, and you've got a patient who has suddenly deteriorated, and your senior doctor or senior surgeon is currently in theatre, and so you need to now go into theatre and explain the situation to the surgeon and see what you need to do. And so when you explain the situation to the surgeon, you can't really take the patient with you, can you? You have to analyse the patient, look at the scenario, then go and relay that information as accurately as possible to the surgeon. And then from the information that you've relayed, the surgeon or doctor should have a really good idea of what you're talking about, and therefore they can give you the best possible advice or the best possible plan of action. Now, after this, I had another station on ethics, so they asked me to look at the sheet I'd had. Now, of course, by the time I got to that station, I'd forgotten all the things that I'd written. So I simply asked the interviewer, may I have a second just to look through my notes? They gave me time. Then we discussed about the different things. And again, I had a really good time talking about the ethical scenario that I was given. Luckily, my interviews were all lovely. They were great. And I came out feeling like, yeah, that was a good interview. And I felt as if this MMI setup put me under less pressure. So yeah, that was my experience at King's College. I got the offer, and yes, if you're applying, I hope that this video has been useful. Don't get too stressed about it. The MMI structure really helps de-stress the whole interview procedure. Just make sure that you go to each station with a fresh mindset, as I mentioned, and don't shift away from your game. You know why you're there, so stick to your guns, use your experiences, use your knowledge of ethics, use your knowledge of medical procedures, and make sure to have really nice discussions with the interviewers. Hopefully this video has been useful. Please do drop a like down below. I would really appreciate it, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please do. There'll be many more interesting videos coming out soon. So thank you for watching. Once again, thank you so much to medify.co.uk for making this video possible. So take care, guys, and see you soon.